Welcome back to the channel. Today's story pulls back the curtain on royal life and reveals how a single request caused serious tension behind palace doors. Sarah Ferguson, known publicly for her charm, confidence, and independent spirit, reportedly left palace staff furious after making a demand that exposed deep cracks in an already overstretched system. Behind the smiles, traditions, and carefully managed appearances, the royal household operates under intense pressure, strict rules, and unspoken hierarchies. This isn't a story built on tabloid exaggeration or recycled rumors. It's a closer look at how power works behind the scenes, how personalities clash under royal expectations, and how one moment of insistence can create lasting resentment. What happened next reveals just how fragile palace order can be when personal collides with institutional control. To fully understand why this incident escalated so quickly, it helps to understand the environment Sarah Ferguson was operating in at the time. Royal households do not function like ordinary workplaces. Every movement, appearance, and engagement is carefully mapped out well in advance. Schedules are planned weeks, sometimes months, ahead. Security teams coordinate routes and contingencies. Household staff synchronize transportation, wardrobe, timing, and protocol down to the minute. What looks effortless from the outside is actually the result of constant preparation and rigid structure. In this system, even a minor change can trigger a cascade of complications. A delayed departure affects security rotations. A last-minute location change disrupts transport planning. An unexpected request forces staff to abandon established protocols and scramble for approvals that normally take time. The system is designed to precision, not spontaneity. Flexibility exists, but only within clearly defined limits. Staff members are trained to anticipate needs, but not to improvise without authorization. Their role is not to question hierarchy or redesign plans on the fly. It is to execute instructions that have already been vetted through layers of approval. Ferguson's request reportedly bypassed that entire structure. It required immediate action, no preparation window, and no opportunity for consultation. Staff were placed in an impossible position, expected to deliver a flawless outcome without the tools, authority, or time to make it feasible. Failure in such an environment is not treated lightly. Mistakes carry reputational consequences, not just for individuals, but for the household as a whole. Staff understood that if anything went wrong, responsibility would flow downward, not upward. That reality added another layer of pressure. The request did not just disrupt logistics, it threatened careers. This incident did not happen in isolation. Insiders have long suggested that Ferguson struggled with the loss of autonomy that came with royal life. Before marriage, she was used to making her own decisions, changing plans freely, and expressing herself without layers of oversight. Inside the royal system, those instincts collided with institutional expectations. Personal preference had to yield to protocol. Individual emotion had to be managed for public optics. That tension reportedly surfaced often, though usually in private moments that never reached public attention. Small disagreements, frustration over restrictions, resistance to rules that felt excessive or unnecessary. Over time, these moments accumulated. Each one added strain to the working relationship between Ferguson and the staff tasked with supporting her. In this particular case, staff members felt their professionalism was being undermined. They were expected to produce perfection under conditions that made success unlikely. At the same time, they were absorbing the emotional weight of their employer's frustration. For junior staff, the pressure was especially intense. They lacked the authority to push back and the experience to navigate conflict diplomatically. Saying no was not an option. Explaining limitations often made matters worse, as it could be interpreted as incompetence or resistance. The emotional labor required in these moments was substantial. Staff were expected to remain calm, respectful, and composed, even when they felt overwhelmed or unfairly blamed. Over time, this dynamic can erode morale. When effort is consistently met with criticism rather than understanding, motivation declines. People stop going above and beyond. They focus instead on avoiding mistakes and minimizing exposure. According to later accounts, the emotional fallout from the request lingered long after it was fulfilled. Communication reportedly became strained. Conversations grew shorter and more formal. Trust began to erode. Staff no longer felt confident anticipating needs, fearing that any assumption could trigger conflict. Instead of proactive service, they adopted a defensive posture, doing only what was explicitly required. That shift alone was enough to damage the working relationship. Royal households depend heavily on trust and intuition. When those disappear, efficiency suffers. What once flowed smoothly becomes rigid and cautious. Every interaction carries tension. Senior aides later described the situation as unsustainable. While Ferguson could be generous, warm, and engaging, her unpredictability made consistency difficult. Staff never knew which version of her they would encounter. This pattern is not unique to Ferguson. It reflects a broader issue faced by many royal outsiders. Those who enter the institution without growing up inside it often struggle the most. The monarchy is not designed to adapt to individuals. It expects individuals to adapt to it. Its rules are shaped by centuries of precedent, not personal preference. Resistance, whether intentional or not, places an individual in constant friction with the system. Publicly, Ferguson was often portrayed as misunderstood or unfairly treated. Media narratives focused on her outsider status and personal struggles. Privately, staff experienced a different reality. From their perspective, emotional volatility and last-minute demands disrupted carefully balanced systems. Both perspectives can coexist. A person can feel constrained and still cause disruption. Sympathy and strain are not mutually exclusive. The anger that followed the request was not simply about Ferguson as an individual. It was about exhaustion. It was a result of cumulative stress, repeated disruptions, and the feeling of being unheard within a rigid hierarchy. One request became the breaking point because it represented everything staff had been absorbing quietly for months or years. In hindsight, this incident serves as a case study in what happens when personal expression collides with institutional rigidity. Neither side fully yielded. The system did not bend. The individual did not fully conform. Both paid a price. For the staff, the cause came in the form of burnout, frustration, and eventual reassignment. For Ferguson, it reinforced her reputation as someone who never quite fit the royal mold. The monarchy continued forward, unchanged. She moved further toward the margins. And that brings us to the end of today's story. If you found this breakdown insightful, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth stories that go beyond the headlines. Royal life is often presented as flawless, but behind closed doors, it is shaped by pressure, structure, and human conflict. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.